Some inventions arrive with fireworks, huge stages, dramatic music, and a CEO acting like humanity has just unlocked a new level of civilization. And then there is the USB. No fireworks, no red carpet, no dramatic trailer voice saying, "This summer, one cable will change everything." Yet every single day, billions of people use it. They charge phones, connect keyboards, plug in cameras, move files, rescue laptops at 2% battery, and perform the ancient ritual of trying to plug in a USB cable the wrong way. Flip it once, still wrong. Flip it back, suddenly it works. Science may never fully explain this, but behind this tiny everyday technology is a man many people have never heard of, Ajay Bhatt. Ajay Bhatt is not a household celebrity like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, or Elon Musk. Most people would not recognize him walking down the street. There are no stadiums full of fans chanting his name because he helped simplify computer connectivity. Although, honestly, maybe there should be. Bhatt was born in India and later moved to the United States, where he became a computer architect at Intel. Intel is one of the biggest names in computer hardware, the kind of company where people think deeply about chips, circuits, standards, and technical documents so long they could probably be used as emergency furniture. But the problem Bhatt wanted to solve was surprisingly simple. Connecting devices to computers was a mess. Today, plugging in a mouse or a keyboard feels normal. A person connects the cable, waits a second, and the computer usually says, "Sure, welcome in." Before USB, things were very different. Computers had a confusing jungle of ports. Serial ports, parallel ports, PS2 ports, SCSI ports, game ports, printer ports, ports that looked similar but were absolutely not similar. A keyboard used one connector, a mouse used another, a printer needed something else, a scanner had its own situation. For an engineer, maybe this was normal. For everyone else, it felt like trying to solve a puzzle designed by someone who had never experienced stress. The problem was not only the number of ports. Many devices were not truly plug-and-play. Sometimes users had to shut down the computer, connect the device, turn the computer back on, install drivers, restart again, and hope the machine decided to cooperate. The computer behaved like a strict nightclub bouncer. Who are you? Are you on the list? Where is your driver software? Imagine buying a printer, bringing it home, crawling behind a giant computer tower, staring at strange holes and thick cables and thinking, "I just wanted to print a recipe. Why am I fighting a spaceship?" This was the frustration Ajay Bhatt saw clearly. Bhatt understood something important. Computers were becoming common. They were moving out of labs and offices and into homes, schools, libraries, studios, and small businesses. Regular people were starting to use computers every day. But if connecting a simple device felt like a technical exam, computers would never feel truly friendly. So Bhatt and other engineers began asking a simple question. Why should every device need a different connector? That question may sound basic, but many important inventions begin exactly like that. Someone looks at a normal daily annoyance and says, "Wait, why are we all just accepting this?" That small question became the beginning of USB. USB stands for Universal Serial Bus. The name sounds dry, like something printed in a manual nobody reads, but the idea behind it was powerful. Make connecting devices simple, universal, and reliable. USB was not just another cable. It was a new way for computers and devices to understand each other. Instead of every device needing its own special port, USB gave them a shared language. A mouse, keyboard, printer, camera, storage drive, and many other devices could connect through the same basic standard. It was like giving all those devices one common passport. Suddenly, the computer did not need to treat every visitor like a suspicious stranger. One of USB's most important features was hot plugging. That meant users could plug in a device while the computer was already running. No shutdown, no restart ceremony, no emotional damage. The computer could detect the device, identify it, configure it, and begin using it. To modern users, that sounds obvious. Of course a device should work when it is plugged in. But at the time, this was a huge improvement. USB made computers less annoying, and that is an underrated form of innovation. Some inventions make people say, wow. USB made people say, oh, finally. And sometimes, oh, finally, is even more powerful than wow. But creating USB was not as simple as drawing a new connector and saying, okay, everyone use this now. A technology standard only becomes powerful when many companies accept it. Intel alone could not force the entire planet to switch. USB needed support from computer makers, software developers, peripheral manufacturers, and operating systems. That is one of the hidden challenges of technology. A great idea is not enough. It has to be manufactured, it has to be cheap enough, it has to work across devices, it has to be reliable, and it has to convince an entire industry to move in the same direction. That is not just engineering. That is coordination on a massive scale. The first USB standard appeared in the mid-1990s. At first, it did not instantly take over the world. Technology rarely changes overnight. Old systems stick around, companies need time, users need time, hardware needs to be redesigned. But slowly, USB gained momentum. More computers included USB ports, more devices supported USB, operating systems improved their support. Consumers began to realize how convenient it was. And then, gradually, USB became everywhere. By the early 2000s, USB was no longer some strange new port. It was the port. The tiny rectangle had officially entered everyday life. Then came one of USB's most iconic forms, the USB flash drive. Tiny, portable, and easy to use, USB drives carried documents, music, photos, school projects, office files, presentations, and occasionally mystery files nobody remembered downloading. For students, they were lifesavers. For office workers, they were essential. For anyone who lost one, they were tiny plastic containers of panic. The flash drive made data feel physical and portable. A person could carry important files in a pocket, on a keychain, or buried somewhere deep inside a backpack next to old receipts and one lonely mint. USB helped make digital life easier to move around. USB was not only about data, it also carried power. At first, that seemed like a convenient feature. A small device could draw power from the computer. Nice, useful, nothing too dramatic. But over time, USB became one of the most common ways to charge devices. Phones, headphones, speakers, cameras, power banks, game controllers, smartwatches, desk lamps, tiny fans, and random gadgets bought online at 1 a.m. At some point, does anyone have a USB cable? Became an international emergency signal. When a phone hits 3% battery, humanity becomes united by one mission: find the charger. Of course, USB also gave humanity one shared comedy experience: plugging it in the wrong way. The classic USB-A connector had two possible orientations. Technically, that means a 50% chance of getting it right. Emotionally, it felt more like 5%. Everyone knows the ritual. Try once. It does not fit. Flip it. Somehow, it still does not fit. Flip it back. Now it works. Nobody understands why. The cable has won. The human simply accepts defeat and moves on. Even with that little frustration, USB-A was still a massive improvement over the chaos that came before it. Years later, USBC arrived, and the world collectively exhaled. Finally, a reversible connector. No more flipping, no more guessing. No more silently fighting a cable in public while pretending everything is fine. USB-C also became much more powerful. It could transfer data, charge laptops, connect monitors, support docks, and handle many different tasks through one small connector. One port could do the work of several older ones. That was exactly the spirit of USB from the beginning. Reduce complexity, make devices easier to connect, and help technology feel less like a puzzle. USB-C was not just a new shape. It was the USB idea growing up. To be fair, USB has not always been perfect. Later naming systems became famously confusing. USB 3.0, USB 3.1, USB 3.2, Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 2x2. At some point, the name started sounding like rejected robot characters from a science fiction movie. But even with confusing names, the core idea remained incredibly successful. USB gave the tech world a shared connection standard. It helped devices work together. It reduced the number of cables people needed. It made computers more friendly. And it proved that sometimes the most important technology is not the one people notice. It is the one people stop having to think about. What makes Ajay Bhatt's story especially interesting is that for a long time, most people did not know his name. Everyone knew USB. Almost nobody knew Ajay Bhatt. That is the strange fate of many engineers. Their work becomes part of everyday life, but their names stay hidden. They do not always become celebrities. They do not always appear on magazine covers. They build the invisible systems that make everything else work. A shiny phone gets attention. A dramatic product launch gets attention. A viral app gets attention. But a standard that quietly helps billions of devices connect? It usually just does its job. And maybe that is exactly why this story matters. Ajay Bhatt's work reminds people that innovation is not always loud. Sometimes, innovation is a small port on the side of a computer. Sometimes, it is a cable in a backpack. Sometimes, it is the reason someone can connect a keyboard, charge a phone, move a file, or give a presentation without fighting 5 different adapters. Bhatt and his team helped remove friction from technology. And friction matters. Every time technology becomes easier, more people can use it. When more people can use it, more people can create, communicate, learn, work, and build. USB helped make personal computing feel more accessible, less intimidating, and more useful for everyday life. That is a quiet kind of revolution. The lesson from Ajay Bhatt's story is simple but powerful. Great innovation often begins with irritation. Someone gets annoyed enough to ask, "Why is this so difficult? Why does every device need a different port? Why does connecting a printer feel like punishment? Why should regular people need technical knowledge just to use a computer?" Those questions can lead to world-changing answers. USB may be small, but its impact is enormous. It changed how devices connect. It shaped the growth of personal computing. It made accessories easier to build and use. And it helped create a more convenient digital world. All from the idea that technology should be easier. So the next time someone grabs a USB cable, plugs in a phone, connects a keyboard, charges a laptop, or transfers a file, they probably will not think about Ajay Bhatt. Most people never do. But maybe they should. Because behind that ordinary little connector is a story of practical genius. A story of engineers solving real problems. A story of technology becoming easier. A story of a tiny invention that quietly changed billions of lives. Ajay Bhatt may be a hidden engineer, but his work is everywhere. On desks, in backpacks, beside beds, inside airports, behind monitors, under office tables, and inside that one drawer full of cables nobody dares to organize. USB does not need a spotlight. It has something better. It became part of everyday life. And in technology, that might be the greatest achievement of all.